I'm here with Alice Fowler at the exhibition 2024 for Guildford Arts, and she's actually an author. You've got your books here that you're promoting and signing of short stories, is that correct?
Yes, that's right. I'm very excited to be here. This is my collection of short stories. It's called The Truth Has Arms and Legs, and it's a collection of 12 short stories that was published last year. In fact, my launch party, I've just realised, was exactly a year today.
It was. I went to it and it was fascinating because you read from the actual book, didn't you?
I did, yes. I've had an amazing year since, actually, with quite a lot of events, which is all new ground for me. So I've had a wonderful time meeting people who've read the stories, which has been wonderful, actually.
Well, it's not just meeting people. I hear you've won quite a few awards.
Oh, thank you. Well, I have. Over the years, yes, I've been writing short stories, well, at least 5 years, maybe a bit more than that. Along the way, I've entered into competitions really to have a deadline very often, to get something finished, and in hope of getting some encouragement. And yes, I have won and been shortlisted or longlisted in quite a few prizes, which has been fantastic and did lead, in fact, I'd say, to the publication of my book.
But you're actually here, and we're actually obviously at an art exhibition, and you were telling me that your writing has a similarity to paintings.
Yes, well, I think it does. I think that when it's going well, there's one story actually that I really, as I wrote it, I strongly felt I was painting, and it was a story that just completely flowed. It's the first story in my book, and it's called The Race, and it was the first story actually that won a competition. It won the Historical Writers Association Short Story Prize in 2020, and it's a story about a gypsy girl running a race against local villagers at the Hurtwood in the 1920s, and this was all based on some historical research that I did, and I read quite widely, and then my imagination took over and I wrote from the perspective of this gypsy girl running barefoot. And that story, I have to say, did really flow. I loved writing it, and I just felt like I was painting. With my words, I would have a dab of this colour here and a dab of that colour there, and it pulled out in a rather blissful way. It's not always like that as a writer, but that time it was.
And is that in this particular?
It is actually, yes. I can even show you. It somewhat inspired the cover. I wanted the cover to show momentum.
But do you always write from sort of history?
Times do, yeah, a mixture. So the story I'm talking about is The Race, the first story in there. And about a bit under half the stories are historical, a bit over half are contemporary. So I get inspiration from all sorts of different things, really. Sometimes some little incident in my own life that then I just run with in a new direction. I like short stories because I do find them genuinely quite creative, because you don't, very often, in fact, as I begin, I don't know where they're going to end, and I really let the words flow, and because relatively short, I can afford to do that, and hopefully wrap things all up in some way at the end.
I've heard they're actually harder to write sometimes than a novel. You have to be a little bit more concise.
You do have to be concise, but I like that. I quite enjoy editing my work, so for me that's a natural process. I also write novels, and I find that obviously it takes much longer to write a novel. They're more complicated, so just because I don't like to plot particularly, keeping all those strands in my head is difficult. Whereas for me, a short story is easier. It's like firing an arrow. I sometimes think you fire your arrow, don't know where it's going to land, but you kind of believe in your arrow, and you see where it takes you, and that's very fun.
Well, that's fascinating. Thank you so much for being here, Alice.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.